The manager didn't lower his voice. "You can't stay here," he said, loud enough for nearby tables to hear. "We're not doing this tonight." The elderly couple stood frozen near the door. Snow melted off their coats and pooled at their feet. The woman tightened her grip on her husband's arm, whispering that it was okay, that they'd already eaten earlier anyway. It wasn't true, but saying it made leaving easier. No one objected. A few people stared. Most went back to their food. Naomi watched from behind the counter, fingers pressed into the edge so hard they hurt. She had just counted her money in the break room. Enough for rent, barely enough for groceries. Nothing extra. Not tonight. A customer leaned toward the manager and muttered, "Aren't those the people from the news?" The room shifted. The man flinched, not from the cold, but from recognition. He had that look, the kind people wear when they know help will cost someone something. The manager glanced at Naomi and said quietly, "Don't. If you serve them, this becomes your problem." Naomi hesitated. Then she stepped forward anyway, and in that moment, without knowing it, she chose a path that would cost her far more than a meal and reveal something no amount of money could ever fix. Before we continue, if this moment already moved you, take a second to like and subscribe. These stories only reach the people who need them because of you, if you were standing there. Would you have stepped forward too? Tell us in the comments. Naomi learned early that survival came down to numbers, not the kind you showed teachers or banks, the quiet kind you ran in your head while wiping counters or standing on a bus that smelled like wet coats and exhaust. Rent minus hours, hours minus sleep, sleep minus patience. At 22, she could tell you exactly how many shifts it took to keep the lights on. She knew which bills could wait 3 days and which ones could not wait at all. She knew the sound the fridge made when it was almost empty, a hollow hum that meant you should stop opening the door. That morning, before work, she sat on the edge of her bed and counted what she had left. She smoothed the bills flat with her palm, as if that might make them stretch. Enough for rent, barely enough for food, nothing extra. There was no room in the math for generosity. Her phone buzzed once on the mattress beside her. A reminder she hadn't set, but didn't need. Dad. Refill due. She turned the screen face down and finished counting anyway. Her father, Marcus, had taught her how to fix things when she was small. Loose hinges, broken cords, leaky taps. He believed most problems were just puzzles you hadn't looked at closely enough yet. When his hands started shaking and his breath began to fail him, that belief didn't go away. It just turned inward. "It's nothing," he said every time she asked. "Just tired." Naomi learned not to argue. Arguing wasted energy. Energy was another thing they couldn't afford. The restaurant was already loud when she clocked in that evening. Christmas Eve brought out a particular kind of hunger. People wanting warmth, comfort, proof that things were okay for at least one night. Lights blinked in the windows. Someone had hung cheap tinsel over the counter. It shed little silver threads onto the floor that Naomi swept up twice before giving up. She moved automatically. Pour coffee. Smile. Repeat orders back so people felt heard. Let jokes slide even when they scraped. Her manager, Trent, paced the floor like a man guarding a border. He believed order was something you enforced loudly. Naomi had learned that staying invisible was safer. By 7, the place was full. That was when the door opened and let the cold in. Naomi noticed because the sound changed. Not louder, quieter. Like the room inhaled and didn't know what to do next. She looked up and saw the couple standing just inside the doorway. They didn't rush. People who had been turned away before never did. The man's shoulders were slightly hunched, his coat thin but clean. The woman held his arm with both hands, thumbs rubbing small circles into the fabric like she was keeping time. They didn't look around for sympathy. They looked for permission. Trent noticed them immediately. He always did. His eyes flicked to their shoes, then their coats, then their faces. He sighed, already irritated. "We're full," he said, even though Naomi could see 2 empty booths near the back where the heater worked best. The woman opened her mouth, closed it again. The man nodded once, already turning. That nod landed somewhere in Naomi's chest and stayed there. Someone at the counter whispered something. Naomi didn't hear the words, but she saw the way the couple stiffened. Recognition did that to people, made them smaller. Trent glanced at Naomi. His voice dropped, sharp and final. "Don't," he said. "If you serve them, this becomes your problem." Naomi stood still. She thought about the bills on her bed, about her father pretending not to cough, about how easy it would be to look away. Then she stepped forward, not because she was brave, not because she expected anything back, but because hunger, any kind of it, was something she understood too well to ignore. And the math in her head, for once, stopped making sense. The booth Naomi led them to was near the kitchen door, not hidden, but not on display either. The woman sat first, smoothing her coat before folding her hands on the table. The man lowered himself slowly, the way people do when their bodies hurt in places they don't mention. Neither of them reached for menus. "Water's fine," the woman said quickly. "We don't need coffee?" Naomi asked, already reaching for the pot. The woman hesitated, then nodded. Her eyes stayed on the table. Naomi poured carefully, watching the steam rise between them. The man wrapped both hands around his cup like it was something precious. His wedding ring caught the light, thin gold, worn smooth. "I'll bring bread," Naomi said. "You don't have to. It's already out." She walked away before they could refuse. In the kitchen, she grabbed a basket and filled it with rolls still warm from the oven. Her hands moved fast, mechanical. Trent was watching from the register, arms crossed. She felt his stare like pressure against her back. When she returned, the couple hadn't moved. They sat exactly as she'd left them, quiet, careful, trying not to take up space. Naomi set the basket down. "I'll be back." The woman looked up. "Thank you," she whispered. Something in her voice made Naomi pause. Not gratitude exactly, relief maybe, or disbelief that someone had simply been kind. She returned to the counter and started refilling coffee for other tables. A regular named Paul leaned toward her, voice low. "You know who those people are?" Naomi kept her eyes on the coffee pot. "No. Hendersons. Their son's all over the news. Embezzlement, fraud, whole thing's a mess." Naomi's hand steadied. "They're not him," Paul shrugged. "People don't see it that way." She moved to the next table without answering. 20 minutes later, Trent found her near the dish station. "What are you doing?" Naomi didn't look up. "My job." "Your job isn't adopting problems." He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Those people, their son stole from a charity, kids' hospital donations. People are angry, Naomi. You serve them. You're choosing a side." "I'm serving customers." "No, you're making this place radioactive." He pointed toward the dining room. "Someone's already taken a picture. If that goes online, then it goes online." Trent stared at her. "You think you can afford to lose this job?" The question landed exactly where he meant it to. Naomi's jaw tightened. She thought about her father's prescription, about the envelope marked "Final Notice" on her kitchen counter, about how little room there was between stability and collapse. "I'm feeding 2 people soup," she said quietly. "That's all." Trent shook his head. "Don't say I didn't warn you." Naomi brought them tomato soup and grilled cheese sandwiches, not because they ordered it, they hadn't ordered anything, but because it was warm and filling, and she could mark it as a staff meal if she had to. The woman's eyes filled when she saw the plates. "We can't pay for this," she said, voice breaking. "It's handled." "But, please," Naomi said, "just eat." The man reached across the table and took his wife's hand. They bowed their heads together for a moment, silent. When they looked up, they ate slowly, carefully, like people who'd forgotten what it felt like to be safe. Naomi turned away to give them privacy. At the counter, conversations had shifted. People weren't just eating anymore. They were watching. A woman in a red sweater whispered to her husband. A teenager held up his phone, angling it toward the booth. Naomi walked. Over. Don't. The teenager looked up, startled. What? Put it away. It's a free country. Not in here, it's not. Her voice was quiet but firm. Put it away or leave. He hesitated, then lowered the phone. Naomi walked back to the kitchen, heart pounding. She'd never spoken to a customer that way, never put herself between someone and their judgment. But she'd also never seen people shrink the way the Hendersons did, like they'd been carrying shame so long it had fused to their bones. The post went up before her shift ended. A blurry photo. Naomi setting down plates. The Hendersons mid-bite. Caption: Local diner defends thieves on Christmas Eve. Guess morals don't matter when you need likes. By the time Naomi saw it, there were already 30 comments. Disgusting. Those people should be in jail. Fire her. Trent called her into his office at the end of the night. You're suspended, he said flatly. 2 weeks, unpaid. Naomi's stomach dropped. For what? For creating a hostile environment. For ignoring direct instructions. For making this place a target. He leaned back in his chair. I warned you. I fed 2 people. You made a statement, and statements have consequences. He exhaled. Look, I get it. You're a good person, but good people don't pay rent, Naomi. Reality does. She stood there, numb. 2 weeks without pay meant falling behind. Meant choosing between her father's medication and groceries. Meant everything she'd been holding together coming apart. Go home, Trent said. She left without a word. The news ran the story the next morning. Son of disgraced executive faces federal charges. Parents reportedly shunned by community, left without support network. Naomi read it on her phone sitting on the bus that no longer took her to work. The article detailed the son's crimes. Money stolen, lives ruined, trust shattered. It mentioned the parents briefly. Elderly couple reportedly struggling after being ostracized by former friends and neighbors. There was a photo of them leaving a courthouse. The same coats, the same exhausted faces. Naomi closed her phone. She thought about the woman's hands, the way they'd trembled around the coffee cup. About the man's quiet nod of thanks. About how invisible suffering made people. How easy it was to look past pain when it didn't announce itself. Her father was awake when she got home, sitting at the kitchen table with the newspaper. Saw what happened, he said. Naomi set her bag down. It's fine. Doesn't sound fine. She started making tea she didn't want, just to have something to do with her hands. I'll figure it out. Marcus coughed, sharp and wet. When he stopped, he said, You did the right thing. The right thing doesn't pay bills. No, he agreed, but it lets you sleep. 3 days later, someone knocked on her apartment door. Naomi opened it to find the Hendersons standing in the hallway. The woman held a folded envelope. The man looked older somehow, more worn. They both looked terrified. We're so sorry, the woman said immediately. We saw what happened. We never meant... It's okay, Naomi said, though it wasn't. It's not okay. The man's voice was rough. You lost your job because of us. I'm suspended, not fired. Because you showed us kindness when no one else would. The woman's eyes filled. We came to apologize. And to give you this. She held out the envelope. Naomi didn't take it. I don't want money. It's not. The woman opened it, showing her. Inside was a handwritten letter and a business card. It's a reference. And a contact. Someone who might hire you. We don't have much, but we know people. Good people. People who'd value someone like you. Naomi stared at the card. It was for a small non-profit. The kind that worked with families in crisis. "We can't fix what happened," the man said, "but we can try to help, if you'll let us." Naomi looked at them, these two people carrying their son's shame, their own grief, the weight of being judged for someone else's choices. They didn't owe her anything. They'd already lost so much. But they'd come back anyway. "Why?" she asked. The woman smiled sadly. "Because you saw us when everyone else looked away. Because dignity isn't something you lose just because someone says you should." Naomi took the card, not because she expected it to work, not because it solved everything, but because turning down kindness felt like betraying the very thing she'd tried to protect. The Hendersons left quietly, the way they did everything. Naomi sat at her kitchen table and read the letter. It was simple, honest, specific. It described what she'd done, not in grand terms, but in human ones. She treated us with respect when respect was costly. She chose compassion over convenience. Her father read it over her shoulder. "That's something," he said softly. "It's a reference, not a paycheck." "It's proof," he corrected, "that who you are matters." Naomi called the number the next day. The woman who answered listened to her story without interrupting. At the end, she said, "Can you start Monday?" The job paid less than the diner. The hours were harder. But the work meant something, helping families navigate crises, connecting people to resources, being present in moments when most people disappeared. It wasn't a miracle. It was just a door that opened because someone had seen her clearly. Months later, Naomi ran into Trent at the grocery store. He looked uncomfortable. "Heard you're doing well." "I'm doing okay." "Look, about what happened. It's fine," Naomi said, and meant it. She didn't need his apology, didn't need him to admit he'd been wrong. She'd learned something more important, that kindness wasn't about what it earned you. It was about what it allowed you to keep, your sense of self, your clarity, your ability to sleep. The Hendersons sent her a card every few months, updates on their lives, small notes of gratitude. They never became wealthy. Their son never redeemed himself. But they rebuilt quietly, carefully, with the kind of dignity that doesn't ask for applause. Naomi kept the first card they'd sent her pinned above her desk. "Thank you for seeing us when we felt invisible." She looked at it sometimes, when work was hard, when the math didn't add up, when choosing people over convenience felt impossible. And she remembered. Kindness doesn't always reward you. Sometimes it just clarifies who you are. And for some people, that's the beginning of everything. Kindness isn't always fair. It doesn't always pay back, but it always costs something. And what it gives you in return isn't wealth or fame. It's the ability to recognize yourself when you look in the mirror. And sometimes that's the only currency that matters.